Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of riveting things with microphones because I am a ring announcer as well as an MMA cage announcer. And I'm joined this week for our episode, as I always am, by my two friends who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing to you first, from New York, Mark Prio. What's up, buddy?
What's up, boys? So we were a little worried about finding time to record this week. We had some tough schedules. And it's actually the first time we're recording this show when it's light outside, and it feels super fucking weird. Like, I feel like it's a fake show. Like, I feel like we're practicing or something. It's strange.
Yeah, man. Hey, speak for yourself. I'm on the edge of the Eastern time zone here in Michigan, so it stays light here until like 9:30 in the summer.
Oh, wow.
It's actually pretty cool. All right, now introducing next from Florida, the Sunshine State, the Nicaraguan Nightmare, Omar Artola. Say hi, buddy.
What's going on? If you guys haven't done so already, fucking go see Top Gun. Holy shit.
As good as advertised?
I've seen it twice. I'm going to see it a third time.
No.
Dude, it's so good. It's so good.
Is it true that there's no CGI in this movie? It's all like cameras strapped to jets?
No, there's definitely CGI in this movie, but there's a ridiculous amount of real flying in that movie. And flying in real crazy-ass planes doing real crazy-ass shit. Most of, if not all of Tom Cruise's stuff is, maybe with the exception of the very, very beginning, without giving away any spoilers, the first scene is probably CGI just because of what it was. But all like the fighter jet shit, pretty sure all that was real.
Wow. Is Tom Cruise good?
He's Tom Cruise, bro. He's good at what he does.
He's a movie star, man.
He's not going to play John F. Kennedy anytime soon, but he's good at what he does.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Cruise is a movie star. When Tom Cruise himself he's a whole industry. When Tom Cruise makes a decision to do a movie, like teams of people, are employed, of like his own people.
Oh yeah, he took all these kids through like real Navy training, and I mean,
wow,
those kids could probably sign up for the Navy tomorrow and be like ready to go.
I doubt that.
Fair.
So
a bit of an exaggeration, but.
So
at some point in time, I'm going to address my lighting because this is a joke.
For those of you who are listening, he looks like a light bulb that's been turned on.
Yeah, we need a little ring light action over there, my man.
I don't know what to fucking do. So
Top Gun Maverick, 2 thumbs up from the Artola household.
If I had 4 arms, it'd be 4 thumbs up.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, gentlemen, we have some things to talk about for this episode. This is not going to be the longest episode, folks, because we don't have any fights to recap. There were no fights from this past weekend. We had the weekend off, as did you, in terms of MMA viewership. But we do have a UFC fight night this coming weekend to talk about, so we will not have any names on the marquee this week. So just to run down real quick, we're going to start this episode with our segment Inside the MMA Sphere, where Omar gives us all the juicy news headlines from the MMA world. And then we're going to dive into UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Rozenstruik. That is coming up for all of us this Saturday. We're going to talk about a few fights from this card. And then we're going to end a little early with a little bit of trivia. Sounds good? All right, let's do this. Before we get into anything else, gentlemen, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for joining us. If you haven't done so yet, go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss a video if you're liking our content. And the best thing that you could probably do is if you can share this video or this clip that you're watching right now with a friend who you know who loves MMA or even just likes MMA and might not yet know about us. Nothing would help us out more than that, to share this content around. Like I said, like, subscribe, all the things. If you agree or disagree with any of our takes this episode, drop a comment below. Let us know what you think. We would love to engage and have the conversation keep rolling on. If you want audio only for our show, we got you. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And we're on social media. You can find us at @andnew_MMA show in all the places. Once again, at @andnew_MMA MMA show on all the socials. All right, enough of the preamble. Let's go to our first segment, Inside the MMA Sphere with Omar Artola. What's going on, buddy? What's new in the world of mixed martial arts?
What is going on? We do have a few stories to go through, and then just a couple of fight announcements. So we will jump right into it. First is a little news on some Benson Henderson business. It's more of a fun little tidbit. For those of you who don't know, Benson Henderson likes to fight with, or I guess at this point, liked to fight with his toothpick inside of his mouth. If you've never seen or noticed this started back in 2012 when or at least we first found out about it, I should say, in 2012, after he fought Nate Diaz, and as the decision was being read, he popped out a toothpick from his mouth, got everybody wondering. Dana White had things to say about it. I mean, everybody had things to say about it. Turns out he got the habit from his dad when he was about 7 or 8 years old. I guess his dad used to run around with a toothpick all the time and just kind of be with the toothpick and, look cool. So he started emulating it. His mom hated it. And now that Benson Henderson has kids, he was noticing that he was thinking about his kids having kind of the same addiction to it, being, seeing him running around with a toothpick and doing the same thing when they're younger. And now he's like, oh my God, they could get hurt. And it's like, yes, that's why we don't do these things. But so he has now put the toothpick thing to rest because he's worried about his kids emulating him and getting hurt. Seems so crazy considering he's gotten into full fist fights with this toothpick in his mouth. But
it's stunning that a severe injury has not occurred.
Never. It never did. I mean, the man has barely taken any visible damage throughout his entire career.
Yeah.
Which is
he's a very good
crazy
defensive
to think
fighter.
about. It's crazy to think about.
Probably the best quality he has, actually, is being a defensive fighter.
Next on the list, more into the real news. Ryan Hall is actually out for the rest of the year. He has a torn ACL that he suffered in training.
Oh, damn.
He is going to need surgery and rehab. So the fight that he had lined up in August has been scrapped. And we probably won't see him until maybe mid 2023, like spring 2023.
Jeez.
Staying on the topic of injuries, Junior Dos Santos. So really quick, actually, we didn't talk about Eagle FC last week. We all just kind of breezed right by, totally forgot about it. Truth of the matter is, the two fights that we were really focused on kind of ended all fucked up, which is, I think, why it really didn't cross our minds. So just to kind of recap really quickly, Thiago Santos versus Hector Lombard ended in a no contest. They both were scrapping. I'm pretty sure they both dropped each other in that fight as well. But in the end, Thiago Santos kneed Hector Lombard in the head while he was down, and they called it a no contest. Ended the fight that way. Junior Dos Santos against Yorgan De Castro was looking good for Junior Dos Santos. He was looked crisp. He was boxing him up. He was looking good, and boxed him up so good his shoulder popped out right out of the socket.
Hey.
So Yorgan De Castro immediately called it out. Was like, dude, his arm is totally dislocated. They stopped the fight. TKO win for Yorgan De Castro, but Junior Dos Santos was, in my opinion, winning that fight up until that moment. So it was actually good to see Junior Dos Santos looking as good as he did up until that moment. So hopefully when he's good and recovered, he'll come back. But that was basically to kind of segue into Junior Dos Santos is having shoulder surgery as a result of that issue. So he's also targeting a 2023 return. Aljamain Sterling will be looking to move up to featherweight sometime soon. When asked about whether he was going to fight Merab at some point, he was basically saying Merab deserves an opportunity to fight for the belt. He deserves an opportunity to fight for Georgia's behalf. And he's going to move up to featherweight to give him the opportunity to do that. They are not going to fight each other. They are boys. So it's just not going to happen. So we'll probably see Sterling.
He's not going to be moving anywhere unless Merab wins his next fight.
Right. He did say in the conversation, he did say with a win from Merab. He was very specific about that. So that is true. Last on the news list here is good old Paulo Costa is in the news. He was questioned by police after allegedly assaulting a nurse over a vaccination card. So Costa has been pretty vocal in the past, probably even recently, about how he doesn't think he needs a vaccine because he's already been infected twice with COVID, and he's got antibodies or whatever the hell, and so he doesn't feel like he needs a vaccine. By law right now, it seems that if you want to fly into the United States from a foreign country, you need to have a vaccine. You need to be vaccinated in order to do so. The CDC is currently requiring non-U.S. citizens to show proof of being fully vaccinated against COVID-19 before you travel by air. So the story goes, and there's two versions. There's the nurse's story, and then there's Paulo's story. I'll give you guys both. But as the story goes, the nurse said that Costa showed up to the vaccination station, walked around for a few minutes before saying he had already been vaccinated, and then when asked for proof of vaccination, Costa decided to leave. And then the nurse was following him, and then she says when he saw me following him, he decided to turn around and he threw an elbow that hit my mouth.
Oh my God.
According to Costa, after he decided to leave, Costa told the security guard he had been vaccinated, but the nurse refused to give him the vaccination card, held him by the arm. Costa allegedly told the security guard that he tried to free himself and accidentally hit the nurse. So I guess he was trying to get himself away from the security guard to hit the nurse instead. So it doesn't sound great for Costa. It sounds like he hit this woman, and he sounds like he was trying to get one over by like somehow finagling a vaccination card. Because even on Twitter, which these guys like self-snitch on each other, which is, I think, ridiculous. But on Twitter, somebody asked him, like, Paula, just show your vaccination card. And Paula was like, I don't have one. Like, I didn't get the vaccine. So he was obviously trying to get a vaccination card without getting the vaccine just so he can get into the United States.
Now we're talking.
Well, we're going to need that stuff figured out if he is going to fight Luke Rockhold.
That I totally believe, though. And I wonder if they're just going to move the fight to somewhere else. And I wonder if Luke Rockhold even has the patience for this shit anymore, because Luke Rockhold isn't one to keep trying to chase somebody down. I can tell you that. So we'll see what happens. But Paulo Costa is seriously making life super difficult for everybody. So we'll see what happens.
What else is new? Basically.
On to some fight announcements. Derek Minner is out against Damon Jackson. He will now be facing Dan Argueta this weekend. We'll go into that a little bit more in detail in a little bit. Brian Ortega versus Ryan. No, not at all. 1 second. Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez will be headlining UFC Long Island on July 16th. Mark definitely needs to get tickets for that. He's somehow. You think he's probably not? Your son's not old enough for that yet, right?
Nah. He couldn't stay up like that late.
What if it's an early card? Maybe if it's an early card.
Oh, maybe.
Next on the list, Paddy Pimblett is finally making another return. He's going to be fighting Jordan Leavitt against UFC London, in UFC London on July 23rd. Victor Altamirano versus Jake Hadley has been added to UFC 278 on August 20th. Caitlin Chukagian versus Manan Fior has been added to UFC Paris on September 3rd. Along with that, headlining, if I'm not mistaken, maybe. Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori, rebooked for UFC Paris in September 3rd.
That's the co-main.
They're co-main. Who's headlining?
It's Gone, and
it is Gone.
And Tuivasa.
Right. Okay. And Norma Dumont versus Danielle Wolf has been added to UFC September 10th event. Last on the list is a little PFL action. Kayla Harrison versus Julia Budd has been officially announced for July 1st, which is right around the corner. So that'll be an interesting fight. I think, kind of a solidifying fight for her legacy, I guess, in that sense.
Nice.
Yes.
But that's all we got for you inside of the Sphere this week.
Thank you, sir.
You know who we could have put on the marquee this week? Mariusz Pudzianowski.
Oh my God!
Did you guys see that KO?
Yeah, he won by knockout.
Dude,
Nasty uppercut.
Nothing if not entertaining, man.
I couldn't get over the fact that these guys had sponsors on their bodies.
Yeah,
you couldn't get over what?
They had sponsors on their bodies.
Oh yeah, they always do that over there. Yeah.
Holy crap! They look like they. I mean, those guys look like race cars. That was crazy. That was crazy.
Yeah, dude, the guy he KO'd is like a very legit fighter. Like, he has wins over good guys. Granted, they're at lighter weight classes. He's not really a heavyweight, which I'm sure is why he got knocked out. But yeah.
Mariusz Pudzianowski is going to have one of the... I remember watching World's Strongest Man.
Hell yeah.
And that was the first time I'd ever seen this dude. And
that was like the guy.
Yeah, man, that was way back also.
One that kind of burst World's Strongest Man into like a mainstream thing. Everyone was watching him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kept winning.
He was a beast.
But I remember when he wanted to try fighting and everyone was like, all right, like, just because you're strong doesn't mean you could fight. And like he's done pretty damn well for himself. Like he's got a fun career as a fighter.
You're definitely not going to tell that man he doesn't have one-hit knockout power.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. All right, boys, let's get into this coming weekend. UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Rozenstruik. We're not going to review or preview every single bout on this card. We're obviously going to talk about the main event, co-main, and a few others. Before we get into the ones that we have already on our slate to talk about, are there any other fights or fighters that you guys just want to highlight, spotlight for our listeners and viewers? Just say, hey, watch this fight, watch this fighter this coming weekend. Mark, you got a name for us?
Yeah, so I'll mention a few, unless Omar, if you got one and want to go first in case I steal your one.
Yeah, the only one I guess it would really be on my list that I'm just kind of looking out for is Alonzo Menafield. That's it. I know I've enjoyed watching him. I don't know what his record is off the top of my head. He lost his last fight. And he's been a little up and down. He looks like he's sort of like in the 50-50 range. But he's a fun fighter to watch. Just hopefully he kind of gets one on his side this time.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something interesting about that matchup. So, yeah, I agree about Menafield. He's a fun guy to watch. Obviously, he has a win over Paul Craig in the UFC, which is a pretty big win at this point. But he is up and down. Has a couple losses where maybe he shouldn't have lost. But so the guy he's fighting is a debuting fighter. Kind of a guy who goes for like the KO from the jump. So I actually think that might be a crazy fight because I feel like Menafield can get suckered into that type of fight also. So maybe one to watch. But the interesting thing is that this guy he's fighting supposedly has a ton of controversy around him because he has changed his name a couple times to try to act like he is not the same fighter who was losing early in his career so that he could have like this sexier record and people caught him. So like, I guess he is good now. Like his recent record is good and obviously he's earned getting to the UFC. But I guess for a while there, he was losing a bunch of fights and tried a couple times to change his name and like act like he wasn't the same guy. And he had people on his team calling like things like Sure Dog and Tapology and being like, no, like you have a fight on here. I never fought this fight, so on and so on. So like pretty fucking sketchy stuff. So I'm rooting for Alonzo Menafield here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, pretty wild. But yeah, I'll tell you a couple more. So one also on the main card is Poliana Botelho fighting Karine Silva. I think it's Karine. I'm not sure how she says her first name, but she's the debuting fighter here, and she seems to be a true prospect. She's a dangerous grappler, which has kind of been Botelho's kryptonite thus far, so she may get a debut in here, but she's one to watch. And then another maybe lower level than some of the other fights. Like there's guys on here like Mike Trezano's on this card who are not going to dive into his fight. Joe Selecki, same deal. Like these are legit guys. We'll see what they do. But I'll point out Benoit Saint-Denis, who we watched take an ungodly beating in his debut at the hands of Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos in a fight that could have been stopped about 800 times. And he would not go away and kept cracking dos Santos like late in that fight. And he's back for his second fight now on this card against Nicholas Stolze. So I am interested to see him simply because of the heart that he had in his debut. So we'll see what he does here.
Nice. All right. Well, let us hop into the first fight that we're going to talk about. Opening up the entire fight night, going down in the women's flyweight division. Erin Blanchfield, Jersey's own, taking on J.J. Aldrich. Blanchfield looking really good in her past few fights. She's riding a 5-fight win streak. Of course, most recently getting a big win over other top prospect Miranda Maverick. And J.J. Aldrich, of course, also bringing in 3 wins of her own into the octagon this Saturday night. Most recently taking out Jillian Robertson. Omar, let me throw it over to you first. What is your take on this women's flyweight matchup?
Yeah, these girls were both scrappy, which is, I think, the one thing I'm really interested about this fight. Jillian Robertson, if there's one thing you can say about Jillian Robertson is that she's a girl that doesn't go away easily. She's not the most skilled fighter in the world, but she's definitely very difficult to kind of run over. And J.J. Aldrich was very, very effective in that fight. Was dominant in that fight as far as I'm concerned. And so I remember at the end of that fight being very excited to see JJ Aldrich's next fight. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. As far as Blanchfield is concerned, she just beat Miranda Maverick not too long ago at the end of last year. She's another one that's also very scrappy as well. Miranda Maverick has had her ups and her downs, but Blanchfield was the one who you could see in that fight pushing the pedal to kind of push the pace in that fight, where Miranda Maverick kind of let go a little bit. So I'm excited to see this fight. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I don't think it'll be one-sided like some of the other fights that they've have been. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think if I had to choose one, I'm going to go with JJ Aldrich by decision.
Nice. Mark, what's your assessment of Erin Blanchfield taking on JJ Aldrich?
So this is a great fight. I'm wildly confused by the UFC's fight placement on this card. Like, to me, outside of the main and co-main, this is the next best fight on the card. And somehow, instead of being the feature fight, it's the opening fight of the entire thing on Fight Pass. So I don't really know what is going on. Or not Fight Pass, ESPN Plus. But anyway, to the fight, Blanchfield is a huge favorite, minus 550. Aldrich is plus 400. Aldrich is a girl that I think a lot of people look past because there's nothing that she necessarily excels at, but she's really well-rounded. Her UFC record is now up to 7-3. She's won 3 in a row. I thought, as Omar said, that her most recent win over Jillian Robertson was particularly impressive for her. And I think it's time that she starts getting some respect on her name. But with that said, she has unfortunately been matched up across Erin Blanchfield, who is probably the hottest prospect in this division right now outside of Manon Fior. Blanchfield is walking through girls in the UFC thus far. She's 2-0. She's 8-1 overall, and it's really her last fight where she absolutely handled Miranda Maverick.
She did.
That I think made people say, like, oh, wow, this is real. So it's possible that JJ can surprise and stuff some takedowns. She did that against Jillian Robertson when I didn't expect her to, but Blanchfield is a much bigger challenge than Jillian Robertson. She's better on her feet. She's going to set things up better. She's a much better takedown artist. And if Miranda Maverick couldn't stop Blanchfield's takedowns, then I don't really think Aldrich can. And once Blanchfield is on top, her top game is nasty. So I think Erin Blanchfield has a ton of talent. I think she continues to put it on display in this one. And I think she'll have her way for the most part and roll to a UD.
I love it. I agree. I'm a big Blanchfield fan because I was a big, or still am a big Miranda Maverick fan, and to see what Blanchfield did to Miranda Maverick, I was like, wow, this girl's legit. Also, Erin Blanchfield from New Jersey trains out of MK Muay Thai, and MK Muay Thai is one of the staple gyms on the East Coast Muay Thai scene. So I've announced quite a few folks from MK Muay Thai. At the most recent event, Erin Blanchfield was there, and I didn't even know. I saw on social media afterwards people taking pictures with Erin Blanchfield. She must have been in the crowd. I had no idea.
Damn,
so
could have been best friends. She could have been on the show today.
That's what I'm saying. Next time I'm gonna look out for her. So shout out to MK Muay Thai. Shout out to Muay Thai champions Marco Matias as well as Ashley Blanco. I've announced both of them a few times and sort of seeing them both grow up in the East Coast Muay Thai scene. So maybe Erin Blanchfield will grace the Muay Thai ring at some point. That would be cool.
Nice.
All right, let's move on to the flyweight division. Jeff El Jefe Molina taking on Zhalgas Zhumagulov, a.k.a. Jaco. So Zhumagulov, of course, very talented guy. Most recently lost at the hands of the very talented Manel Kape. And the lesser-known Jeff Molina, very impressive, 10-2 as a pro, undefeated in the UFC so far. Has appeared on Dana White's Contender Series. I believe if you count the Contender Series, I believe he's 3-0 in the UFC. In his 10 pro fights, he has 8 finishes. Most recently, he defeated Daniel Lacerda in the UFC. Mark, let me start with you this time first. What's your take on Molina versus Zhumagulov?
So fairly tight odds here. Molina is actually favored more than I thought he would be. He's minus 190. Zhumagulov is plus 155 as the dog. I like this fight a lot. I think it's kind of flying under the radar. Maybe because Zhumagulov is 1-3 in the UFC thus far. But his losses, as you said, are Manel Kape, Amir Albazi, who's a great prospect right now, and then Raulian Paiva in a fight that was probably a robbery. And prior to joining the UFC, he had won 3 in a row against Tyson Nam, Tagirulanbekov, and Ali Bagutinov. So the talent is absolutely there. So I'm very interested to see him stand across the cage as a test for Jeff Molina, who has obviously been very impressive so far, but hasn't quite fought that competition level yet. He's turned heads, I would say, as like an up-and-coming guy who people maybe didn't expect to be what he has been so far. The guy's a gamer, but this is going to be his most credentialed opponent so far, I would say. And honestly, this is why I'm surprised at the odds, but I'm going to pick Molina in the end here. But I think Zhumagulov is probably faster, and I think he's probably the better wrestler. So I think there's a lot in his corner going into this fight. But for some reason, I can't seem to not pick Molina, and I can't really tell you why. He has this feeling of one of these guys who it's just like clicking for, and you almost expect him to look better every time you see him. Like he just has this it thing, and for whatever reason, I just feel like until I see someone beat him, I'm having a hard time not picking him. So not the most technique analysis you ever heard, but I'm going to go with Jeff Molina until someone stops him. I'll say a decision, competitive fight decision for Molina.
Omar, what's your take?
To add on to kind of what Mark was already saying, Molina is a very scrambly guy. He likes to kind of get into those wild scrambles, and I don't think he's afraid to get on the ground with anybody, regardless of what their wrestling credentials are. It's very possible he gets stuck under this guy's name is going to kill me, Zhumagulov. It's very possible he gets stuck on the bottom.
I mean, I'll adjust you slightly. Zhumagulov.
But I also agree that Molina, I think it's just a little bit more well-rounded. I trust his hands a little bit more, and the fights are always going to stand on the feet, start on the feet, I should say. And so I was really impressed with his ability not only to start on the feet, but also take it to the ground if he needed to, adjust himself on the ground. He has decent control when he's on top, and he's definitely striking when he's on top. So I think if Molina gets the opportunity to be on top for whatever reason, whether it's a failed takedown attempt or reversal or whatever it is, he's going to take advantage of it. So I'm going to go with Molina, and I'm going to go with second round TKO.
Yeah, I'm looking for Molina to shine in this fight as well. I think Zhumagulov is a talented guy, but I really am impressed by the record and the stats of Molina. I haven't seen him much myself, but just his record alone, I mean, 10-2 with 8 finishes. I think he's going to be bringing in a lot of firepower into this fight. All right, moving up into the bantamweight division, Tony Gravely versus Johnny Munoz Jr. Gravely, 22-7 as a pro, most recently defeated Simon Oliveira by UD. Munoz Jr., very interesting nickname, Kid Kvenbo. I'm not sure what that means. He is 11-1 as a pro with 7 submissions to his name. So far, 1-1 in the UFC. So, Omar, let me start with you first. What's your take on Tony Gravely taking on Johnny Munoz Jr. in the bantamweight division?
So it's a very interesting fight because Tony Gravely is essentially sandpaper. The man just wants to be up against you, and he wants to wear you down, grind you out, do as much to your body as humanly possible without necessarily standing in the pocket with you. Where on the other hand, I don't know personally who this Kvenbo is. Kid Kvenbo. It seems like he had a fight on the Lewis Gahn card. But what I can tell you is that the kid is good at his submissions, and he is good at being able to pull them off. And if he's able to get that against Gravely, that's going to be a big feather in his cap. And Gravely will give him the opportunities to do it because of the positions Gravely is going to want to put him in. It'll be very interesting to see if Gravely changes up his approach and just goes to a striking style and doesn't really try to take him down. I highly doubt that that's going to happen. I'm pretty sure he's still going to rely on his wrestling. But if Kid Kvenbo ends up putting up something that threatens Gravely while he's down in his guard or something like that, it's very possible we see a stand-up fight sooner rather than later. With that being said, I want to go with Gravely just because I've seen this kid fight and I know how he fights, and he's effective, although he may not be the most entertaining. But the statistics here have me messed up with this kid. So I'm gonna go on a long shot here. I'm gonna go with Johnny Munoz Jr. Kid Kvenbo by submission, round 1.
All right, Mark, give us your take. Tony Gravely, Johnny Munoz Jr.
Yeah, Omar might make you feel better. It's not a long shot at all. The odds are pretty damn tight. Gravely is the favorite, but minus 135, and Munoz is plus 110. So very close. But yeah, you kind of laid it out. This is a tough one for a couple of reasons. The one, as you said, is that Tony Gravely is a guy who will lean on his grappling to win a fight when he can. But against a submission threat like Munoz, I'm not sure that he can. But then Munoz, on the same note, is a guy who can maybe nullify Gravely's wrestling advantage with that grappling, but I'm not sure he can do much to actually win the fight unless he catches a sub.
Makes sense.
So we just saw Tony Gravely manage to stay safe against an active sub threat in Simon Oliveira. So I think he can, and really what this one comes down to for me is that I think Gravely is just the better boxer. I think he's the more technical fighter, and that he can probably use that to control the fight a bit, because I don't expect the whole fight to take place on the ground, especially if Gravely takes it there and he's like, nah, this is too threatening, I'd rather not be here. I think he can keep it standing if he so chooses, especially because his defensive wrestling is good as well. Mm-hmm. So I will land on Gravely for that reason. It's a tricky fight. I could see Munoz snatching a sub, but I will say Gravely by UD.
Nice. I'm going to ride with you again, Mark. I think I see Tony Gravely outpointing Johnny Munoz and walking away from this fight night with the UD victory. All right, boys, let's move on up to the featherweight division. Damon the Leech Jackson versus Daniel the Determined Argueta. Jackson, 20-4 as a pro with 15 submissions. So far, he is 3-1 in the UFC, most recently defeating Kamuela Kirk. Argueta making his UFC debut this Saturday night. He is 8-0 as a pro, undefeated with 6 finishes. Mark, let me start with you this time. What's your take on the debuting Argueta taking on the very tough and submission-savvy Damon Jackson?
Yeah, so Jackson is actually 3-1 on this run in the UFC. Overall, he is like 3-2-1-1 because his first run in the UFC was a loss, a no contest, and a draw. It will always stick in my head. One of the weirdest 3-fight runs ever. But yeah, also the Determined is a horrible nickname. Were you just going to ask me something? You looked like?
No.
Oh, so Jackson's the big favorite here. He's minus 500. Argueta is plus 375. This one was supposed to be Damon Jackson against Derek Minner, but Minner had to pull out, as Omar mentioned in the Sphere. So instead, we get the LFA bantamweight champion stepping up a weight class on short notice in Daniel Argueta. Ultimate Fighter fans may remember him as Brian Ortega's first pick a season ago. He was upset by the eventual winner, Ricky Tercios, in round 1 of that tournament. But since then, he's won 3 straight. He's still undefeated outside of the Tough House, and I would say he absolutely deserves this shot in the UFC. His only problem here is that he's a wrestler who relies on his grappling, and he's fighting a guy who's bigger than him and who is one of the scrambliers there is. So you never know, but I just don't think Argueta's game is going to work on Damon Jackson. Not only has Jackson looked fantastic on the mat, but he's also added real striking threats to his game lately. Like he looks like a guy you don't want to be in the cage with right now. He's a tough dude to figure out. So I'm going to go Damon Jackson. I will say Argueta tires up a weight class in a grapple-heavy fight as it goes on, and that Jackson is able to find his neck in the third. So give me Damon Jackson sub-victory. Nice.
Omar?
Yeah, Damon Jackson fights like one of those guys who's not afraid of anybody. He literally just walks forward and, whatever happens, be damned. He paid for that against Ilia Topuria, but most people do. But yeah, man, his grappling is very, very legit, and he's not one of these guys that lays on you and preys on you or just tries to get you in some sort of clinch and does nothing about it. Damon Jackson is an active threat every time his hands are on you. And I think that's going to be a real problem for Argueta. Argueta seems to be that exact type where if he gets you down to the ground, he cares more about control than anything else. And Damon Jackson is just as dangerous, I think, from bottom as he is from top. So I think for this fight, especially coming in off the short notice, let alone the fact that he's a size smaller technically, I'm going to go with Damon Jackson. I'm going to go with submission round 2.
We are unanimous, gentlemen. I will also be taking Damon the Leech Jackson. By the way, awful nickname generally, great nickname for a submission guy.
Yes.
Like if he was like
Leech,
a randomly...
Leech is way more apropos for Damon Jackson than it is for Li Jingliang.
Facts.
Is that Jingliang's nickname?
Yeah, the Leech.
Oh, I forgot that. Yeah. If you're not a submission guy, then it's a randomly bad nickname. But if you're a submission guy, great nickname.
Yes. Agree.
Okay, let's go on to the women's strawweight division. Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Felice Herrig. A little bulldog, Herrig, 14-9 as a pro. Mostly decision victories on her record. She's riding a 3-fight losing streak coming into Saturday night. Karolina Kowalkiewicz in a similar boat. She's 12-7 as a pro with big-time victories over some big names, including, I'm brain farting.
Rose Namajunas.
Rose, yeah, Thug Rose. But she herself is riding a 5-fight losing streak coming into this Saturday night. So both of these ladies looking to get back into the win column. Omar, let me start with you this time. What's your take on Kowalkiewicz and Herrig facing off?
So this is really interesting, right? Because both of these girls have had very tumultuous second halves of their careers. The real kicker for a little bit of trivia knowledge is last time that Felice, the first time that Felice had lost a fight in this little losing streak of hers was Karolina. And the last
time. Oh, you're saying it.
Yeah, the last win that Karolina had was Felice.
Yeah.
So they've both basically been involved with that turning point in their careers that's led them to where they are now. So it's interesting that this fight will sort of, I would imagine, determine the future of one or the other.
Gotta think so.
This seems like it's going to be a loser goes kind of fight. Karolina, like you said, 5-fight lose streak. Felice on a 3-fight lose streak. And to be fair, Felice has had her victories and things like that. But when you start getting to the top echelon of the division, Felice has never really been able to, I guess, win a fight. I wouldn't even say be competitive because she fights. She's definitely in there to scrap, but she's just never able to put one out. So with that being said, these girls have, I would think they have very opposing styles, right? Karolina, although she has a ground game, most of the time she's trying to strike with you, she's trying to stand with you. Kickboxing is kind of her bread and butter. Felice is a little bit more of the ground fighter. She would love to take you down. She would love to get your back. She would love to get your neck. That's kind of where her style lives. On top of that, Felice will still strike with you. She's not really scared to strike with folks, but that's just where her bread and butter is. And I think we could say the same for Karolina's game. It's at the end of the day, it is difficult right now to say what's going to happen. And the reason for that is because one, both haven't looked very good in their last few fights. And at the same time, their styles, because they haven't looked good, their styles don't really translate well to me having confidence in them getting it done. Karolina's striking as of late has looked rough, to say the least. And Felice's ability to not get her ass beat while she's on bottom has been rough, to say the least. So Mark might have a little bit more in depth as to where his decision is coming from. To be honest, for me, it's very tossed in the air at this point. It really could go either way. Gun to my head, I'm going to go with Karolina. I think she has at least one left in her. I don't really see a long stretch of wins, frankly, for either girl at this point in their career. But I think right now this is Karolina's best shot at a win. So I'm going to go with Karolina by decision.
Okay, Omar's taking Kowalkiewicz. Mark, give us your take on Kowalkiewicz versus Herrig.
You said almost everything that was in my brain. I would just be repeating you if I said the things I was planning to say. But it is interesting because I feel like I don't want to say back in the day, but some years back we used to see the UFC do fights like this, where it was like two people who are maybe washed and they would do like the loser leaves town deal. I feel like we don't see that as much out of the UFC anymore. They'd rather use that vet to take a loss to a newer fighter, to build a newer fighter. So I feel like we don't see these that often. But we're absolutely seeing it here. Rough streaks for both of them. Felice's, yes, she's lost 3 in a row, but it's also been kind of mixed more with that she can't get herself into the cage because of a myriad of injuries, whereas Karolina's has just kind of been like she's been getting drubbed lately. But definitely no positives in the corner of either girl right now, which is crazy because, as you said, there was a time where Kowalkiewicz beat Rose Namajunas, and Felice, while lesser, she beat Alexa Grasso. Like, she has had her wins as well. So it's like you said, though. I don't know how you pick this. Kowalkiewicz hasn't fought in a year. Felice hasn't fought in 2. The only thing I can really grab onto is, and also like you said, it's going to be a style clash. Kowalkiewicz probably looking to strike. Herrig's going to try to drag it down. The only thing I can really grab onto is that Felice, though rarely fighting, has at least still somewhat looked like Felice Herrig to me. Whereas I think Karolina has looked like a ghost and frankly like a girl who maybe shouldn't be in there anymore. So based off that point and that point alone, since I don't know what else you really lean on to pick a fight where they haven't fought and they both look bad and all that, I will flip my coin and have it land on Felice to win a maybe 29-28 decision.
Yeah. I tell you right now, the worst case scenario would be Felice winning by KO, because that would solidify that Karolina needs to know.
Oh God! If Felice ever got a KO,
that would be the it for Karolina.
Not going to happen. I mean, both of these girls are mostly decision machines. That being said, I agree with both of you guys, and Herrig is the more determined fighter of the two. I think Kowalkiewicz is, especially in this latter part of her career, she looks more complacent to me sometimes in the cage. Clearly, I think on paper, Kowalkiewicz is probably the more talented striker. But Herrig, I think she's just going to exact her will on Kowalkiewicz much more. I think Herrig is going to be the much stronger woman in the cage. And I disagree with you, Mark, in that I don't think it's a coin flip. I'm going to say Herrig is going to cruise to another UD victory for her record. All right, boys.
Very possible. That's how bad Karolina has looked. And I just want to say quick, I forgot to say the odds. They're as conflicted as me and Omar were, because they're really tight. Herrig minus 125, Kowalkiewicz plus 105. So practically even. But sorry, continue on your way there.
No worries. Let's go now to the co-main event of this UFC fight night between, in the featherweight division between Dan 50K Ige against Movsar Evloev. Ige, one of the better nicknames in the sport, 15-5 as a pro. One of the most exciting 15-5 records that we've seen. 9 finishes to his name, but he unfortunately right now he's coming off back-to-back losses. Most recently at the hands of Josh Emmett, heavy hitter in the featherweight division. Movsar Evloev, on the other hand, he is 15-0. My man is undefeated with 7 finishes to his name, most recently taking out Hakeem Dawodu. So, Mark, let me throw it over to you first. Give us your assessment of this very exciting and consequential co-main between Ige and Evloev.
Yeah, this is a good fight, and Evloev is certainly getting the respect from the bookmakers. He is minus 400. Ige is plus 300. This is the is Movsar Evloev as good as we all think he is fight. We find out here. And I think that answer is yes. Obviously, we know he's 15-0. No one has really troubled him as of yet. Even his split decision over Nick Lentz never should have been a split decision. And Dan Ige, while incredibly tough and impossible to make go away, is not exactly the most impressive ranked featherweight, in my opinion. He basically only has that ranking because he himself got a sketchy split decision win over Edson Barbosa. You remove that from his resume, it doesn't really strike you as an elite featherweight resume. So frankly, I don't expect this to be that hard for Evloev. Ige's been out-grappled before. We just saw Korean Zombie have his way with him on the mat not too long ago, I think 2 fights ago for Ige. And I don't think there's any reason Evloev can't do the same thing. I don't mean he won't have to work. I'm sure he will. I'm sure he'll get cracked a time or two by Ige, especially considering how sneaky Ige can be with his power shots. But I think that anytime Ige creates that 2 or 3 seconds of excitement, that Evloev is just going to be able to change levels or clinch up or do whatever he needs to do to regain control of the fight. I think that he's too good at implementing his own game, at making people fight his fight, and I think that's exactly what he does here, and I will say he wins a unanimous decision.
Okay, Omar, your turn. Give us your take. Evloev, is he going to wipe Dan Ige, off the face of the mat?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely have to agree. I think Evloev is definitely the more grappling heavy fighter, and he's just a lot more adept at using it. I totally see him ducking under punches on a regular basis in this fight, and just blasting doubles and getting Dan Ige on the ground. I feel like Dan Ige will get up from a few of those takedowns, but I think it's going to cost him to get up. I also think that we'll probably see, once he gets up, I think Evloev will probably take that and use that advantage to fake a couple shots and kind of get off on Dan Ige as well. And then as soon as Dan Ige feels like he has, some stand-up moments, he's going to try to move forward, and right back down we go. And I think that's really going to be the story of the fight. It's very possible Dan Ige catches him. Everybody can get caught, but everything on paper, everything that we've seen out of these two, especially recently, says that Evloev should have this in the bag. So I'm going to go with Evloev by decision, and it should be a pretty handy decision.
Yeah, both these guys are exciting fighters in different ways. Evloev is exciting because he's an undefeated guy, 15-0 as a pro. So he's exciting in that sense of like, man, nobody's beating this guy. And so you kind of tune in to see if he's going to lose. You're going to see if he's getting even better and better and better. And then Dan Ige is a much more conventionally exciting fighter, the kind of fighter that fans love, the kind of fighter that promoters love. That being said, I think Evloev at this weight, at 145 pounds, is going to be a much bigger guy in there. And to have a grappling-centric approach, I feel like we're going to all be disappointed in this matchup that we're all excited to see at featherweight. And we're going to see Evloev just kind of exact his will. I think he's going to smother Dan Ige, and he's going to cruise to what will be his 6th consecutive decision victory on Saturday night. And he's going to keep on marching up the featherweight rankings. All right. Let's go on to the main event of UFC Fight Night. Volkov versus Rozenstruik, with these two marquee names, Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik. So, of course, Volk, 34-10 as a pro with 22 knockouts on his record. He's coming off of a submission loss to Tom Aspinall back in March. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, 12-3 as a pro with 11 knockouts to his record. He's also coming off of a loss against Curtis Blades by unanimous decision back in September. Omar, let me start with you. The big boys are headlining this fight night. What's your take?
Okay, so I would have to imagine that Volkov is still the more technically sound fighter in this matchup. And I would still have to imagine that what you would have thought would have happened between him and Derek Lewis, where he was, be able to pick him apart and, work off of his jab, use his movement, lateral movement and things like that, stay away from the right hand, any crazy overhands. I feel like all that still applies for Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Mm-hmm. I feel like losing to Derek Lewis is probably the best preparation that he's going to have to beat Jairzinho Rozenstruik. If he loses this fight, Volkov is probably going to be like the biggest asshole ever. This seems like Volkov's fight to win. It's tailor-made for him to win. Stylistically, I think it works for him. Rozenstruik, I think, is the one who's going to have to work, I think, a little bit more to find that shot. I don't think anywhere in the cards is Rozenstruik winning a unanimous decision of any kind against Volkov. And so if you look at it in that sense, Volkov's only path to victory, if I thought he knew how to do a submission, I would say submission. But his only path to victory is going to be knocking out Volkov. Mm-hmm. And I just think Volkov is way too tall, way too lengthy, and way too technical with that length to allow that to happen. So I'm going to go with Volkov by unanimous decision.
Okay. Mark, give us your take on this heavyweight clash.
So Volkov slightly favored here, minus 160. Rozenstruik is plus 130. This is one of those main events where you get like two big-name top 10 guys, and the winner is obviously going to be right in the mix. But the loser is suddenly going to have lost 3 out of 4. So the stakes are very high for these guys. The loser's not going to be in a great spot. Granted, their losses are all to like the top guys in the division. These are still top guys. But when you're in the title chase, you don't want to be losing 3 out of 4. So this is a big one. They have both had some nice performances interchanged with the losses lately. I thought Volkov's win over Overeem last year was really impressive, and same with Walt Harris before that. For Rozenstruik, I thought his last win over Augusto Sakai was maybe the best Rozenstruik we've seen in terms of a complete performance. It's just a matter of which guy's going to be able to deliver in a big spot on Saturday, because they're both certainly capable. But to Omar's point, however it shakes out, I think we will probably see Alexander Volkov winning the majority of the fight. He's the more dynamic fighter. He's the more well-rounded fighter. He's better at winning rounds, period. I think the decision you have to make in picking it is just whether or not you think Rozenstruik can land a kill shot and put Volkov's lights out, because he's likely not going to be winning these rounds. And if he can, I think Volkov mostly works his game and maybe even finishes him in his own way late in that fight as Rozenstruik tires.
Yeah.
But I'm going to trust Volkov here. His losses, other than Derek Lewis, are all to guys that had like a true advantage over him somewhere in the fight. And Rozenstruik doesn't have that. He's going to have to find Volkov's chin. And he can be a sniper at times. He's shown it. But Volkov has handled range really well lately. And other than that one slip up against Derek Lewis, he's not a guy who's easy to hurt standing. Like, it's kind of easy to forget how tough Volkov is. Like, no one really hurts Volkov other than that one Lewis fight. He's got a great chin. On the ground, different story, but not standing. So while Rozenstruik obviously is capable, I will roll with Volkov here. I think that he even has a grappling advantage if he ever needed to take it there, if he was getting cracked. But I do think it plays out largely on the feet. I think Volkov will look to the body. I think the front kicks are a factor, maybe even short punches in tight or in the clinch. And I think he starts to wear Rozenstruik down and wins a clear decision.
Wow. You're more convicted than I thought you'd be. I am very conflicted on this fight.
I'm not a Rozenstruik guy, so that probably plays into it. But
neither am I. I'm not as sold on him as I think a lot of other people are.
Tell me again what the odds are.
Tight. Volkov minus 160, Rozenstruik plus 130.
Why aren't you, Omar? Why are you not a Rozenstruik guy either?
I don't know. Maybe I think that at one point I felt the same way about Derek Lewis, in just the sense that he was very sloppy. There wasn't a ton of like technique behind a lot of what he was doing. He was just the guy that knocked people out. And at heavyweight, I feel like that can happen a lot. That's not something that we generally see at lower weight classes. You have a little bit more leeway at the heavier weight classes. But I also think with Derek Lewis specifically, he had a lot of charisma behind him that just sort of made me love him anyway. Like, I just didn't care anymore. And I don't think Jairzinho has that. And like, so I only focus on how he fights from a technical aspect. And he goes in there and if he catches somebody, he catches somebody. But for the most part, if the guy is better than him, there's not really an answer that he has other than just winging and hoping for the best. And I think most people, especially when we start getting to the tippity top of the heavyweight division, I think most people are going to be better than him. And Volkov is one of those guys.
I mean, Rozenstruik is supposed to be this credentialed kickboxer, though.
I mean,
Mark, you were going to say something.
He doesn't. In his last fight, he struck more against Sakai. But normally he just waits and waits and waits. And I that's what frustrates me.
He wants the one hit. He just wants the one hit.
Agree. I feel like he's a perfect top 10 heavyweight gatekeeper. The only thing that obviously bucked that trend is when he finished Alistair Overeem, which is a hell of a feather in anybody's cap. But he was losing every second of the entire fight until that KO in the 5th round.
It's true.
So I'm just not. Again, I said this even while I picked Volkov. Of course, Rozenstruik can catch him. The same way I just described about him catching Overeem. It can happen. I can't pick it.
Yeah.
Man, you guys, you're both influencing me, and now I want to pick Volkov. I was going to pick Rozenstruik. But you know what? To keep it interesting, I'm going to pick Rozenstruik. I think Volk's got a lot of miles on that body. He's got a lot of fights on his record. And I think the law of averages is going to catch up. To your point, Mark, he's only really been hurt by Lewis, but Rozenstruik is another guy at the top of this heavyweight division that's got a ton of power in those hands. And I think he's going to have to catch him. He's going to catch Volk, but he only has to catch him once. He's going to hurt him, and I think he's going to finish him. I'll say this is going to go down in the 1st round. Let's go.
Wow. Wow.
No way. No way. You know, I remember that Derek Lewis fight like it was yesterday, especially because I was
Me too. It's a good fight.
Derek Lewis, Volk almost looked like he like had a brain fart because like his legs just didn't move. Like he just stopped moving at one point, and Derek Lewis, next thing you know, is right in front of him.
He fought a great fight against Derek Lewis. He fought the fight you have to fight. If you want to strike with Derek Lewis, other than Tai Tuivasa, as a technical fight against Derek Lewis, he was doing everything right. He was
perfect for 4.5 rounds.
Teeps to the body, like excellent. He was hurting Lewis. You couldn't quite put him away, though. And then at the very end, Volk got a little tired, and I think his fatigue led to a little bit of sloppiness in terms of position, and he just got cracked.
It was one moment where you could see he had gassed. Maybe he was already gassed, but it was the moment that you saw that he was gassed, and his legs just stopped. Like he was moving, and then he just didn't anymore. And that's when Lewis just hit him with an overhand, and then that was just the beginning of the end, and he just couldn't recover from there. I can't see him. That has to haunt him probably to this day. And it must fuel him to never let something that stupid happen again. Because to him, that has to be stupid. Like, he must have been so pissed off.
Man. God, yeah.
You know what I mean? He would let that happen again.
He just had to stay away for another minute or whatever. How much time was that? Was like towards the. I want to say that was towards the bell.
I think it was last minute. The final minute of the fight. Yeah,
it was the last minute.
Yeah. He just had to stay away. He was going to cruise to a victory, but he got a little sloppy, a little tired.
It was just a moment. It was a moment. Oh.
Going all the way back to my childhood, watching boxing matches with my dad. My dad loves to be the great wisdom passer downer. He loves to remind you of the fact, like he hasn't told me a million times, if we're ever watching a fight together. He's like, Michael, remember, the last thing a fighter loses is his power. Or the last thing to go is his power. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I'd be like, in my head, I'd be like, that can't be true. Like, a guy's getting beat up. He's been fighting for like 20 minutes. Surely his power's got to like go down a little bit. Alexander Volkov versus Derek Lewis is exhibit A for a fighter loses their power last. Derek Lewis getting pieced up for 24 minutes. And the 25th minute, his power was still there. Yeah, so my dad was right that time. Anything else we want to say about this main event or anything else going down this Saturday night at UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Rozenstruik, gentlemen?
The only thing I will say, and I just always like to remind people of this, is these cards, like this one this weekend, for example, may not be the flashiest on paper, may not be the most exciting on paper, but these are usually the cards where wild shit happens. So I recommend that those of you who have the time to watch it on Saturday do, because you might miss some wild things. There's not a lot of fights on here that have any sort of, as many stakes on the line as some of the other cards will, right? Championships, contender fights, and so on and so forth. But these guys are all trying to prove themselves from the bottom and working their ways up. So they're always trying to show out. So these are usually end up being some of the flashier cards that end up coming out. So don't sleep on it. Also, this card, the prelim, start at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this week. So if you're planning on watching it tomorrow night or Saturday night, don't.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Main event's probably going to be like 6:30, 7 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah. Main card starts at 4.
Is it just me, or are the fight night cards getting weaker as of late?
Well, they are getting weaker, and like I said, they're weaker
one every now and then where you'd be like, oh, they struggled to fill this one. Now I feel like it's like every other week I'm like, oof, this card is pretty weak.
There's no draws in it. There's just a lot of newer guys. It seems like they're using the fight night to fill in guys that they want to start throwing in there.
Totally.
And they're using the pay-per-views now to just stack dudes that you know.
I want to say the last fight night card that felt like a really big card was London.
Yeah, well,
remember that last London one recently?
And I don't even think that had to do with who was on it. That's just how it played out. I mean, that just they sold the shit out of that event.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like they used to, on a fight night, they used to always give you a main card where, like, yes, maybe it was just like this, where it had Volkov Rozenstruik main event, Evloev co-main, and that was the draw. But then there'd be like 4 other fights where it was like names and people that were interesting, and you'd be like, all right, like it's just a solid night of scraps. It's not anything huge, but it's a solid night of scraps. Now, the main card is like low-level fighter against debuting fighter in half of these fights. So I just feel like the quality has dipped. And the roster is still huge,
possibly.
so I don't understand why.
But I also think it's this UFC roster. Like, they have so many goddamn fighters now. I'm personally not a fan of them having such a huge roster. In my head, I think it would be better to have sort of a WEC business again, where you kind of have like a sister league or a farm league or whatever the hell, where you bring guys in first, they prove themselves. When they're ready to go, then you shoot them up to the big time, and it's kind of already a big thing. Like, it kind of sells itself to a certain extent. Obviously, that shit ain't my call, but that to me just seemed like it worked a little bit better. It would have its own little storyline attached to it, but instead we have like 500 people in the UFC. We only really know like 150 of them or something like that, and so the other, 350 that end up needing to get fights, they're just sort of like on cards like this. We don't know who the hell they are. We might find out who they are after the fact, but it makes it hard to gravitate people towards spending a Saturday afternoon or night not knowing who these guys are and just kind of hoping for the best.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely got bloated during COVID because they were having a hard time filling cards and they had to sign a lot of randoms.
Yeah.
And it got big again. But it does seem like lately they've been making cuts, which obviously suck in a way as well, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe by later in the year we'll be having cards that feel stronger, but anyway.
It might also help eventually once we start to be able to travel again, because then you'll be able to, because they used to also tailor them to where people were going.
Right.
So like you'd have, Shanghai would have a bunch of Asian fighters on it, and we get to showcase the Asian side of things, London and Paris and whatever the hell else. But we haven't been able to really go anywhere, so we've just kind of just been fucking throwing things on cards and just letting it be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We need more Cerrones. Seems like there's too many guys who fight, and then they're like, you don't see them for 6 months. We need more active guys.
It's true. It's true.
O'Malley screwed it up for everybody, bro. Everybody's taking the O'Malley route, the Patty Pimblett route. Everybody's like, oh, they're doing it. I could do it too. And it's not going to work. It's like what's her name? Thinking that she could just sit out after that fight against Holly Holm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ketlin Vieira, no.
Yeah, no.
But Omar, to your point, some of these fight night cards, man, it's where you see some of the most exciting stuff. What comes to recent memory is Joaquin Buckley. His career-defining spinning back kick was on a fight night undercard. So that's why I got to watch the fights, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, the resume of the fighter does not dictate the excitement of the fight. That is
Amen.
That is definitely not true.
A to the men. All right, gentlemen, let's bring this episode to a close with a little bit of trivia. I got to say, man, one day we're going to have a couple of interns for our show. It's going to be, we're going to have better trivia. Sometimes I struggle coming up with some trivia, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I had a lot of fun last week with our Brazilian nickname trivia edition.
Yeah, that was a good one.
All right, I have two little questions for you guys. These are going to be fill in the blank because I feel, especially for this first one, if it was multiple choice, it'd be a dead giveaway. Okay, question number one. What was the ancient Greek sport that greatly resembled modern-day MMA? The sport was introduced to the Olympics in ancient Greece in the year 684 BC. Holy shit. Let me say that again. This sport was introduced to the ancient Greek Olympics in the year 648 BC. It was an empty-hand submission sport with very few rules. The athletes usually used striking, grappling, wrestling, what you would call it today, but also used kicks, different kinds of joint locks, and chokes on the ground, making it very similar to modern MMA. What was the name of the sport?
This has got to be Pancrase.
Mr. Priel?
I can't remember. I know that I have known this in my life. I was just looking at these books behind me because I even think there is a chapter on it in one of these books that I've read, because I remember reading about it. But I can't think of the name. And when I just heard Omar say that, I was like, shit, that might be it. So obviously it's not my guess, but let's see.
Well, there was that recent, I think, MMA league or kickboxing league called Pancrase?
Pancration, I think it was called.
Yeah, Pancration.
Which was that abroad?
I don't remember.
Omar is pretty much correct. The sport was called Pancration. Pankration is how we would spell it in English. So yeah, Pancration. Holy shit.
I didn't know it was that old. I will say that.
Super old. Oh my
God.
God.
That's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Nate Marquardt fought there. He was the king of Pancrase.
That's right.
I mean, the Shamrock actually fought there, and
yeah, there's a lot. Pancrase was a real organization.
Boss
right.
Rutan. Boss Rutan also fought in Pancration.
Yep.
The Greek word pancration translates to pan, meaning all, and kratos, meaning strength or might or power. So all of power, all power.
I like that one. That was a good trivia right there.
Well, thank you. Okay, number 2. This is also very interesting, very educational trivia this time. And folks, if you have any ideas for trivia questions that you would like to see me, lob up to these two distinguished gentlemen, let us know. DM us on social media at @andnew_MMA show, and let us know these. Well, actually, DM me.
Yeah,
at the Michael Hansen. DM me. So find me on Instagram at the Michael Hansen or on Twitter at Michael Hansen MC, and let me know some trivia questions that you might want me to throw with these guys. Okay, trivia question number 2. Who is the American television critic who coined the phrase mixed martial arts?
Oof.
Got big eyes from Omar. I feel like this might have been too hard. Okay. Any guess?
He was a critic? It's a critic?
Yes. I believe he was a journalist and critic, TV critic. Mark, nothing? Okay, sorry guys.
Multiple choice?
2, I mean, there'd just be names. It's just a dude's name. But when I read this,
this man?
Do you know TV critics?
I don't. So then why would we know this answer?
I don't know.
I think it's like a celebrity that we know.
Hey, man, you win some, you lose some. But when I read this, I thought it was very interesting, very cool. Howard Rosenberg was an American TV critic. He worked for the Louisville Times and the LA Times, and he has won a Pulitzer Prize for his criticism. And he coined the term mixed martial arts when he wrote a review of UFC 1. Wow. So he watched UFC 1 on TV and then went on his column and wrote a review for it. And he coined the term. He's the first person to ever put in writing the term mixed martial arts.
Wow.
So very cool. I didn't even know that. The people
well done.
Gotta watch. We gotta watch back UFC 1 again and see if they ever say that MMA or mixed martial arts.
That I want to watch it again and see if they say it.
Yeah. He wrote the column in the LA Times on November 15th, 1993.
Then I want to watch UFC 2 and see if
they started using it
all the time, like if they just adopted it.
Because I feel like UFC 1 said no holds bar.
Yeah, it was
right.
NXT for a while.
Yeah. I don't think they called it mixed martial arts.
Or if they said combat sports or at all.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, sometimes I give you guys questions and you know them instantly. And sometimes we gotta it's hard to find the sweet spot. I've said it many times. All right. Short show. Let's get out of here, guys. Thank you for listening and or watching, folks. Once again, find us on all the social places at @andnew_MMA show. Once again, if you have any better trivia questions that you want me to throw at these guys, let me know. Find me on Instagram at @TheMichaelHansen. And enjoy the fights this weekend. UFC Fight Night Volkov versus Rozenstruik. Some exciting fights in this card. And boys, any parting shots?
We've got UFC for the next 10 weeks straight. Okay.
It's kind of the norm these days, I feel
I
like.
am straight
really
up
is.
pinching my nipples right now.
Like, it's rare to have a week of no UFC. This weekend felt weird.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Prepare
true.
yourselves. You guys have gotten these 1 hour shitty shows the last couple of weeks. Nuh-uh. Get ready, baby. We're back to full swing next week. Let's go.
Man.
My wife said that to me a few weeks ago. She was like, didn't it used to be like that you would only watch UFC like every other weekend? And I was like, yeah, not anymore.
Yeah.
Anymore? A lot of fighting now. Not just UFC, but now there's UFC almost every weekend, and like 8 other promotions that are worth watching.
Yeah, actually, there was so for no UFC this past weekend, Gervonta Davis fought this last weekend and completely murdered a guy.
Yes, he did.
Put him just right on his ass. He didn't know what was going on when he got knocked out. But if it's not MMA, it's boxing, it's kickboxing. I'm starting to get into the Muay Thai scene a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna have to start writing down names and shit though, because the names over there.
They got one this weekend, I think, coming up, right? A one Muay Thai event?
I don't know if it's this weekend, but they do have one coming up soon.
I don't think it is.
Let's find out before we head back in. It is this weekend, yeah, and it's I believe it's a kickboxing one as well.
Cool, man.
So.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, boys. We got it done. We got it done.
Baby.
Short show viewers,
done.
be thankful that we got it in there.
Boom.
All right, folks. Enjoy the fights, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Peace.